In this very first video, I'm going to talk about the major and the minor scales. And there are roughly two different ways in which I could explain this to you. The first method is fast and it's easy to understand. And the second method takes a bit more time to explain, but it does give you a lot more insight into why things are laid out the way they are, why they are working the way they do. And after thinking about this for a while, I thought, you know what would be best to just explain you both methods. So in this video, I'm going to explain you just how scales work and how we can find them. And then in the next video, we're going to go more in depth with this. So before we can talk about scales, we need to talk about steps and half steps. And if we look at the piano and we go from one note to the next like this, we call this a chromatic movement. And in that case, we're talking about half steps. So this interval, we call that a half step. And then you might have guessed it already, if we skip this note, this black note, and we go from C to D, we call that a whole step. And every scale can be described by a pattern of whole and half steps, by counting these whole and half steps. For example, the C major scale is all the white notes on the piano starting on C. And if we count those notes and we count the numbers of whole and half steps, we get a formula. We get first a whole step, then we get another whole step, but then here we get a half step because there's no note in between. Then we get another whole step, whole step, whole step, and then it ends with another half step. And this formula we can use and we can apply that on any other note we want to start on, and we still get that scale. So for example, if I wanted to start on this note, which is an A, and I use that same formula, I go a whole step, then another whole step, then a half step, then whole, whole. So that makes us end up with this, which sounds exactly the same as this, just starting on a different note. So that is the major scale and how to find it. And this pattern, this sort of combination of whole and half steps, that's one thing. Like, there are going to be some things with music theory, like some of the things are things that you can just understand, and once you understand them, you're good to go. But then there are other things that you need to remember, unfortunately. That we still need to use the brain at some point. So this is one of those things that we need to remember. But don't worry, if you practice this a couple of minutes every day, you're going to be very fast at that. And you can start with just playing this C major scale up and down. By the way, my playing is going to be quite sloppy because I'm playing with my left hand on a small sort of MIDI keyboard. But you can practice that, and then you can look at that formula, write it down, and then start practicing it on different notes as well, like starting on G, for example. Now that's for major scales, and there's only one major scale that we need to worry about for now, so that's pretty straightforward. For minor, however, there's three scales that we need to be concerned about. We need to learn three minor scales, and the first one we can again find very easily, this time by starting on the note A on the piano and playing to the other A an octave higher. That is the A natural minor scale. And again, we can take a look at the pattern where it starts with a whole step, then a half step, whole, whole, half, whole, and then another whole step. So that is the A natural minor scale. And now we can take that pattern and we can do the same thing, but this time, for example, starting on C. So compare that with this one. Can you hear they sound the same even though one is lower than the other one? That's the natural minor scale, which we could also call the Aeolian mode. However, there was a problem with this scale, which had to do with the chords, and I don't want to go too deep into this, but some years ago, like what is it, maybe 100, 150 years ago, they decided that they needed more minor scales because it would help with chord progressions, and the first alteration they created was the harmonic minor scale, and that one is very similar. It's another one of those formulas that we need to remember, and I'll play all of these in C so that you get a good idea, so that you can compare them a little bit better. So the harmonic minor scale, it starts like this, which is up until this point exactly the same as the natural minor scale. Then it goes to an A flat, and then it goes to a B. So in total it sounds like this. And for us it has a little bit of that sort of Arabic kind of sound, I guess. And the tricky thing with this specific scale is that it skips 2 notes towards the end. So if I play up to A flat, then here we go, after this we go to a B, which is an interval of 3 half steps, and we haven't seen that in any of the other scales. It was always 2 or 1. So that is one thing to remember here. That is the harmonic minor scale. So write down that formula. It's first a whole step, then a half step, then another whole step, then another whole step, then a half step, and then 3 half steps. Alright, another important scale to learn about. Now the melodic minor scale, the last one we need to learn about, is a little bit trickier still because it's actually 2 different scales in one. So if I play it, it sounds like this. You might notice that I played the scale differently when I was going down than when I was playing sort of upwards. And when we play upwards, we play a regular major scale, but now with a lowered 3rd scale degree. So the 3rd note of the scale is lowered. So that is this first part. And then we go to an F and we just play all of the white notes up till C. So it sounds like that, and then downwards we play the regular natural minor scale, which we've played before. Now, the reason I'm explaining you all of these minor scales, usually I should say we use the natural minor scale, which was this one. And when it's not mentioned anywhere, you can assume that that's the scale you want to use. But the thing with these minor scales is that we can actually use all of them at the same time, depending on which chord we're using. And we're going to get more into this when we're actually checking out chords as well. But for now, remember these formulas, write them down. You can find them anywhere online as well. And write them down not as the notes. So don't write down like play C, D, E flat, F, G, etc. But actually write down the number of whole and half steps, because then you can apply this scale and on any note on the piano you want to start on. Now that is for scales and whole steps and half steps, which is usually like the whole steps and half step system. That's all you need to be able to play a specific scale. But it is going to be very useful to know all the other intervals as well. So the distance between the notes, we call that an interval. So for example, if I play C and then D flat, we would call that a minor second interval. And if I play C and D, that's a second interval, and if I play C, E flat, it's a minor third. And I can keep going like this and sort of name all of the intervals. And this is another one of those things that we just need to remember. So I will make sure we put the text on the screen here so you can see all of the intervals. It's something to write down and simply remember, just like you did with grammar in school, because it's going to be very helpful to communicate with other musicians and to sort of analyze music. And it's also going to help you in this tutorial or in this course, because from time to time I will refer to these intervals. Alright, so that's all we need to know for scales and half steps and whole steps for now. Next we're going to take a look at sharps and flats.